MVP, which brings us into our next segment, and we're going to talk about who we think is, if the season were to end today, our season awards of Defensive Player, MVP, Most Improved, Sixth Man, Rookie of the Year, and Coach of the Year. So, Mike, you can take us away with who you think is going to win each of those.
I'm going to start with MVP. So I think Bron takes MVP. He's coming off from injury. It really his first injury of his career, to be completely honest. Major injury. He leads NBA in assists. He's 11th in points, and he's 4th in efficiency. LeBron, I am the biggest LeBron hater, so this is hard to say, but he has really come alive this year. He's turned that team around. Not that they weren't good last year before he got hurt. They were the 4th seed, I believe, 4th or 3rd. But I think him getting Anthony Davis helps him a lot. It takes pressure off him. It helps be able to be more of a facilitator compared to just the ball dominant player who's got to score every bucket. I think he has proven this year that he is still the best player in the league. And especially at 30, 35 or 34? 35, right?
35.
At 35, I mean, he's still running with everyone. His minutes are down only 2 minutes per game from his career average, and at 35, that's absurd. And he's shown this year that he is still the best player in the league. He's hitting clutch shots, making clutch plays. I harp on his defense a lot. I don't think he's a great defender, but he stepped it up this year. Not saying he's a great, still a elite defender, but he has definitely at least put some effort towards it because his build, he could be an elite defender, if he wanted to. But he's shown that he's a great scorer, an elite passer, a leader. And at the end of the day, great leader. And I feel like for MVP, you got to be a great leader.
I think you gotta look at my players coming out of the East. I see Giannis taking it back to back and taking his second MVP of his career. I think Giannis. I think you got to look at for MVP or what people look at now is best team, best record. Giannis is best player on the team with the best record. I think Giannis is the best player on the Milwaukee Bucks. Milwaukee Bucks are leading the NBA in record right now. But even still, even if you took that factor out, I think Giannis is better this year after his MVP rating season last year. I know LeBron wasn't 100%. I know LeBron is perpetually the league's best player. I think if you take AD off of the Lakers, LeBron has to step up, but I don't think that the Lakers will also step up with him. If you take Giannis off the Bucks, that team maybe be an 8 seed. I think Giannis really helps that team out in the East. I think that for most valuable player, you have to look at the value to your team, and I think Giannis, for his value to the Bucks and the East to make it competitive, I think that Giannis has to win again. I don't see – the only other player I could see is LeBron, but I think Giannis is the MVP this year.
For me, I'm going to have to agree with Mike, and I'm going to have to give it to LeBron James. He had a lot to prove this year, coming off an injury last year and being 35 years old. He has surprised me, and he's playing at a level I haven't seen since Cleveland, honestly. He's playing great, and I think – I get what you're saying, Chayton, about if you were to take him off the team. But I don't think Anthony Davis is the same leader that LeBron James is. I think LeBron James brings that team together and makes them play as well as they do. So I feel like he brings the most value. And like Mike said, he's leading in assists. He's still averaging about 25 points a game. And I think he's just playing great, and I think he has most definitely earned the MVP.
I'm going to agree with Chayton for MVP. I think it's clearly Giannis. I think LeBron has definitely stepped his case up towards the end of the season, but minutes are down for Giannis. Field goal percentage is a little down, but that's because for threes he was averaging 2.8 per game up to 4.8. and his 3-point percentage has gone up from 25 to 30%. So a 5% jump is pretty huge for a guy who didn't shoot a lot and he was not making very many to a guy who was shooting almost 5 a game and he went up 5%. I think that's very significant in his progression. But rebounds went up this year, points went up, defensive efficiency went up in less minutes. I mean, that probably doesn't, really correlate with minutes for defensive efficiency, but it shows how well he is on both sides of the floor, which you can always count on Giannis. One of the hardest players in the league. He works every single play, no plays off. I mean, and he's got his team. I mean, they're on pace they weren't going to get 70. They have 17 games left. They have to win out to hit 70. And people were talking about that maybe before they dropped the last couple, but I mean, they're still going to win 65, 66 games. One of the best teams that we've seen this year and last year. I mean, those Bucks teams, at least in the regular season, they're just dominant. And Giannis is probably the most dominating player in the league, I'd say, right now.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I still think LeBron, I think he's more valuable. I'm not saying like if you take him off, like which team would be worse. I'm just saying like as a leader, Giannis isn't the same leader. Obviously that's not the only thing that MVP matters, but I just think LeBron, he just does so much. Not taking anything away from Giannis, but I just think he does so much, and he's a different type of animal when you need him to be. All right, so next we're gonna move into Defensive Player of the Year. I think Defensive Player of the Year, Marcus Smart. He is the best wing defender in the league, and a wing defender that can guard 1 through 5. He has proven he enjoys having to guard centers. Not that there's many like true centers left in the league, but he'll take anybody. He'll take Embiid. He'll take Gobert. He'll take anybody. Steve Adams. He doesn't care. He loves the challenge, and he's up for it every time. He's had a million highlight plays, big blocks on big men, clutch steals. He's all over the court. He's 11th in steals, but he comes off the bench, so it's not really a surprise. But he's the best defender in the league, in my opinion. As I say, he guards the 1 through 5. And another thing that I think personally is a big thing for a defensive player is hustle plays. There's not a single loose ball that doesn't go Marcus Smart's way. He fights for every ball. He's super aggressive, and he loves the challenge. I think he's just such an elite defender, especially at the guard position that can truly guard 1 through 5, even though he's only 6'3". He loves the challenge. I think he had too good of a season this year, and he's been slept on. Last year was his first time getting on the All NBA defensive team, and he's been in the league 6 years now. So that is just absurd. I think he was the best defender in the league this year.
I like Marcus Smart. I'm a big Marcus Smart fan. I like how he can guard 1 through 5. I think if you look at true big men, like I think there's only a couple left in the league. Like we said, Rudy Gobert is a true big man, is a elite defender in the paint. If there's a guy driving to the hole and you see Rudy Gobert there, he is almost always kicking the ball to somebody else. You do not want to go up against him. A couple blocks and a couple steals averaging this year. His rebound numbers are up from his last year Defensive Player of the Year. I think that he is going to be the Defensive Player of the Year if the season ended today. I think just the paint clogging and powers that he offers down there is unparalleled in the league. I think that he is a very good candidate for Defensive Player of the Year. I don't hate Marcus Smart, though. I think that once Rudy's done, I think that he could have a good Marcus Smart could be that, or as Rudy Gobert declines, big men tend to decline faster than smaller players. I think Marcus Smart, that's his title to lose, but I think this year it's got to be Rudy.
Do you think it's a big man award?
I think it's more so a big man award. I think as the league evolves, I think we're starting to hit the downhill slope of it becoming a completely shooting based league. I think your true big men in the league are coming to an end. I think with Rudy, I think Joel Embiid and Giannis know that, and that's why they're trying to expand their game for 3 points. But I think that for right now it is. I think it could potentially be anybody's award, but I think that um, big men haven't won it in the past. It's not always a big man award, so it just depends who the best player is.
Yeah, I do. I think those are two input picks. Mike, I feel like um, defensive player isn't necessarily a big man award, but I think it's a lot easier for a big man to get it. Considering I feel like they have more opportunities to get like rebounds and um, some more like the blocks and stuff like that. But for me, I'm gonna take it to back to LA and I'm gonna give it to Anthony Davis. Um, the one thing I was a slightly questionable about when I was thinking this was only averaged nine rebounds a game, but for everything else, he was averaging 2.4 blocks a game, which is uh, tied for second in the NBA. And then for steals, he led the Lakers in steals with 1.5 steal, and then was tied for 13 in the whole league. And he was above guards like Zach LaVine and some other notable players. So I feel like he played some great all around defense, and that's who I would probably give my pick to.
This one was tough for me. It's between Marcus Smart and Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis has been electric on the defensive end, but when you just look at pure defense, it's not always stats, and that's why I love this Marcus Smart is because he doesn't care about stats. He wants to get the loose ball, make everything for his team. That's why I give Defense Player of the Year to Marcus Smart. I'd be very shocked if he doesn't get first team all defense this year, just because he can just guard 1 through 5. We touched on it. I'm not going to go too much more with that because I agree, or in depth because I agree with everything you said, Mike, about Marcus Smart. I think he deserves it. It's about time. I couldn't remember the last time I saw a guard one. I've seen, small forwards and wings, but like a true two. I mean, he's 6'4", 6'3". I like to see Marcus Smart win that award.
All right, so next I was going to get into most improved player. Also a Boston Celtic, Jason Tatum. He has gone from 15 points per game to 23. And the 23 can actually be misleading because the past 2 months he's been on a tear. As Chewy said earlier in the podcast, he's been, if you take those 2 months, he was probably the MVP. He has been on a tear with injuries to Kemba after the All-Star break because Nick Nurse trying to hurt Boston in the All-Star game by playing Kemba too long. So Tatum had to step up, and he knew it was his time. He showed he's got that Mamba mentality. He doesn't care who's guarding him. He doesn't care who you are. He's going at you. He's pulling up. He's hitting stuff. He's hitting anything. He's had his big plays too against the Clippers, where he crossed over Paul George and hit the three to go to overtime, and then the plays in LA, the game they lost, he still put up 40. I think it was
41.
41. Yeah, 41 points, and he's been super efficient. That's also what really matters to me. He's been super efficient from the field. He was also always a good defender, but I feel like this year he's truly stepped it up. Because I know Boston used to just put him on guards because he's a little bit thinner of a player, but this year he started to guard like the three more often, and he switches off on every play, and he's an elite defender. And he puts a lot of effort towards that. Good rebounder. He can pass the ball. He's more of a scorer, but I feel like that 8-point jump in points per game is pretty big, and just his clutch factor. He's shown now that he is truly the superstar potential that people were saying when he came out the draft.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with everything you said. I'm not going to rehash the numbers that you brought up, but I think Jason Tatum is my most improved player. And I think not just because of those numbers, but because of I think he's established the player that he wants to be. I think last year in Boston, he was a good player. He didn't know if he wants to be a role player, if that superstar takeover. And I think that with those injuries that happened this year with Boston, I think that Jason Tatum decided that this is my team, I'm going to take over, and it's mine to lose. And I think that he's now taken that step to become the superstar potential that he was supposed to have come out of the draft. And I think that's why he's most improved. I think that his numbers, while they went up, is amazing. I think that him being the player to be in Boston, the player to beat Boston, that's what made him most improved in my eyes.
Yeah, for me, I'm going to have to go with the Pelicans and say Mr. Brandon Ingram. Coming from LA last year, he was averaging 18 points a game, just under 50% at 5 rebounds, 3 assists. This year, kicked it up to 24 points, 46%, 6 rebounds, 4.3 assists. With losing Zion at the beginning of the season, he immediately had to step into that starter role, and he filled in and he jumped right into it. You would have thought that he'd been doing this like prior, like he'd been the leader. Him still being pretty young, I feel like he stepped up a lot. I believe his season high was like in mid to high 30s. He's being very efficient. Although his percentage went down about 3%, he obviously had to take more shots. But I think that's would be my most improved this season.
My most improved happens to be on Damon's favorite team, and that is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. One of my up-and-coming favorite players as well. He jumped up almost 9 points this year. Really came into his own. He was coming into his own in LA. I liked him a lot on the Clippers. And when I saw OKC got him in the trade, I was like, this is definitely a guy that you can go forward with, help leading your franchise in a rebuild. And obviously the rebuild's definitely ahead of schedule. We talked about that earlier, and we'll go into that a little bit later. And, his shots have doubled, but his field goal percentage stayed the same. He went from 8 shots last year to 15 this year per game, and the percentage is still 47. His rebounds doubled. I think Shai Gilgeous is going to be a very good player in this league. I wouldn't say he's necessarily going to be a superstar, but I think he's going to be a very consistent all-star in the NBA, and he's starting to show you this year. He might have gotten snubbed for Chris Paul because I think legacy gave Chris Paul a little extra nod. But, I think Shai Gilgeous next year will make a step to an all-star. And I think this year he's well deserving of most improved.
All right. So next I'm going to go on Coach of the Year. This is going to be pretty quick. I think Coach of the Year is Bucks coach Mike Budenholzer. I think best team in the league. That's really, I think Coach of the Year, that's really what it comes down to. You can't really give it to a coach that, in my opinion, that's not the best team in the league. And it's not like they're just winning games; they're blowing teams out. Giannis's minutes are going down because they don't need them. They're just such a dominant force, and I don't think another coach can really take it just because they really are the best team in the league, and he's a great coach. It's not Ty Lue sitting on the sideline and LeBron James coaching. He is truly coaching this team to wins.
Yeah, my coach of the year would be LeBron James. Mike Bud as well. I think that Mike Bud has helped develop Giannis, and I think that he's taken that team from a good team that they were last year to an even higher level. And I think that to improve an already great team to an even higher level is Phil Jackson did a couple times in the Bulls, and a couple of those great names, Greg Popovich. I don't think Mike Bud's at that level yet, but I think that those steps that they're taking puts him in a conversation for Coach of the Year for those strides that he's made. So, yeah, I'll keep it short like Bud.
Yeah, mine's a bit of a little bit of a bias, but I'm gonna have to give my Coach of the Year to Billy Donovan. Kind of like I talked about before, this year was not supposed to be what it turned out to be. This is supposed to be their rebuild year. He stepped up big time, and he really made with what they had with this team. They had some good vets. They had a lot of good young players, and I feel like he's really done a great job developing these young players because they're not big names. They really haven't picked a lot of huge, big, aggressive names in the draft. So I think he's doing great with what he had, and he made a lot of noise this season. So with that, I'd probably give my Coach of the Year to Billy Donovan.
I'm going to also agree with Damon. I think Billy Donovan showed why he deserved to get that NBA job when he was coming out of Florida. He really stepped up this year. I mean, like Damon said, we all touched on OKC was supposed to win 32 games you mentioned earlier. And, I mean, they were 2.5 games from the 3 seed in the West, which is kind of unbelievable to think about with that roster coming into the season. To tell me they're 2 games back of the 3 seed, I just think if we were able to finish this season, they could have made even more noise to pass the Jazz, who they were a game behind, to at least get the 4, get home court in that playoff series if it was Utah OKC. I think he's very deserving. I think Coach Bud definitely deserves a lot of recognition because I do believe for the majority of the time the best team usually has the best coach. And, I usually tend to lean that way, but what Billy Donovan's done with that team is unbelievable.
I think that's a fair argument. I think that's probably who my second pick would be, my runner-up.
Yeah. Or Nick Nurse, I like him too, what he's done with Toronto, keeping him afloat.
Yeah, he's done a wonderful job too in Toronto.
All right, so next, I think this is going to be quick too. I think it's pretty obvious. Rookie of the Year. I think Ja Morant, Rookie of the Year. He's currently averaging 17.6 points, shooting 49% from the field. Super efficient for a guard, 49%. That's really really good, especially for the number one option on a team. He's also averaging about 7 assists and 3.5 rebounds to go along with a steal and about half a block. I just think he's electric. He's a playmaker. He can be a facilitator. He can be a scorer. He does it all. I think and at his age, he's a great leader. I can't hate on what Zion's been doing, but you got to play more than 30 games. I don't think you can give the award to someone who's barely played this season. Ja Morant's been balling all season, and I don't think you can give it to Zion just because of that. If Zion played a full season and played like this, Zion gets it. It is no questions asked. But Ja Morant's been healthy, and I think he gets the award.
I think if Zion plays the full season at the dominance of what he's playing at, he has been that same conversation with Giannis and Bron for MVP, at the level of numbers that he was putting up. But unfortunately, he played 30 games. Can't give a guy an award for a season-long award of 30 games. Ja is one of the best rookies come out of the draft that has made a day one impact on a team in a long time. Besides you can call like Anthony Davis, LeBron, some guys like that. They're in the league that made day one impacts. But Ja took that team from a very bad Memphis team to a respectable playoff team. Could even make a 6-7 seed if they played better. But I think Ja is going to be a great player. I think he's even getting better, which is scary to me for Memphis if they can hold on to him. I think Ja is my pick this year.
Well, and real quick, just to add in, he did take over from Mike Conley, too, who was the guy in Memphis for his whole career, 10 years. So that was also huge footsteps to fill.
Oh, my bad. I'm going to agree. I'm going to have to go with Ja Morant as well. They kind of touched on just about everything. But yeah, he's been day one, like you said. He's been great all season, consistently. Only thing he's got to work on is landing on 2 feet when he dunks, or he's going to severely hurt himself. But other than that, he's had a great season.
I'm very surprised in some of your takes here, talking about how much you guys were loving the Pelicans earlier. I would talk very highly of Memphis earlier in this podcast, but I'm going to go with Zion as Rookie of the Year, which is well deserving, I think, regardless of him playing 38 games, which is the max he can play. Patrick Ewing won Rookie of the Year playing 50 games. I think Zion sets the new record of fewest games to win Rookie of the Year, because we would not talk about the Pelicans being in the playoff hunt without him, because he's clearly made them better. Even though they were on the rise before he got injured, he has put them up an even better step, because he can fit into any team, because he does not demand the basketball. He can get offensive rebounds. He's very efficient, plays defense. He's a hustle player, even though, he's a big fella. He can only play about 25 minutes, but we would not be talking about the Pelicans making a playoff push if Zion did not come back, because his immediate impact the first 10 games was ridiculous. I mean, he only had one bad game, and that was against Milwaukee. And he got shut down by those trees they have up in Milwaukee, and Giannis and Brook Lopez, and I mean even Middleton throwing him, had him and Robin Lopez. But I mean, Zion, I think, wins Rookie of the Year. It's tough to say because Ja played the whole season, but I'm going Zion.
Zion's got the problem with my sixth man of the year, D Rose, with knee problems, or he's going to have knee problems if he keeps jumping like an idiot. But transition to sixth man, though, I got D Rose. I know if the season continued with COVID, you couldn't put him; he'd be a starter. But because with the loss of Reggie Jackson up in Detroit, but I think that D Rose was the sixth man come off the bench and was an electric pacemaker for the Pistons. And I think that D Rose was putting up Lou Will type stats, not Lou Will minutes, but Lou Will type, hustle plays and things. I think D Rose and his story coming to Detroit and turning that team around as best as he could. Pistons are still trash. I'll get into that later, but I think D Rose is my sixth man.
So for my sixth man, I picked a teammate of the reigning sixth man, Montrezl Harrell. Although he's only averaging 2 more points per game, he's at 18.6 off the bench, with averaging 7.1 rebounds, a block, and about half a steal. He's a difference maker on the court. He's undersized at center. He's 6'8", I believe, and he comes to play every day. He's super good on defense. Puts a lot of effort towards that. And then on the offensive end, he can get his averaging 18 points, almost 20 points a game off the bench. I don't think it's clear cut necessarily for six man. I think there's a couple people I like D Rose too. But I like Montrezl Harrell. I think he's just such a beast, and he can't go unnoticed.
Yeah, for me, for my sixth man, I'm gonna have to go back to the Thunder. I'm gonna go with the German dog, Dennis Schroeder. He's something Oklahoma City has struggled with over the past 4 or 5 years is a lack of a bench, and adding Dennis Schroeder to the team last year was huge. But giving that he's third on the team in points off the bench, and he's averaging 19 points a game, shooting 46%, is huge. He's great from when Chris Paul and Shea had to step off the floor. He's a great boost. And even when something I saw earlier when the season was still going on, that the trio of Shea, Chris Paul, and Dennis Schroeder, they were running 3 guards at times, and that was like one of the most efficient 3 players on the court at the same time. So I think he's made the most impact off the bench, still giving you 31 minutes a game. I think that's who I would have to go with for my sixth man.
Yeah, once again, I'm gonna have to agree with Damon. We've been pretty hit on today, me and him. But I'm gonna go with Schroeder as well for six man. I mean, Like Dave was saying, they have one of the most electric three guard lineups. I mean, they're very efficient together. But overall, just Schroeder. I mean, his field goal percentage went up from 41 to 47, and then 3-point it went up from 34 to 38, scoring 19 off the bench, which OKC desperately needed, especially when Russell Westbrook was there. As it seemed every time he hopped off the floor, they could be up. I remember OKC versus Houston, they're up 15, and a minute 30 later, they're like up one or down one, and because they have no bench, they can't have anybody score. And Schroeder definitely was a player that they desperately needed to come off the bench, and he's been very efficient and has been fitting that 6-man role perfectly for that team. And
I would agree. I would agree with that. Drew, if you want to start with your team.
Yeah, so to wrap up our NBA podcast today, we're just going to recap some of our favorite teams. And I'm going to start with the Boston Celtics. Big Boston sports fan, just so you guys know all around. Best sports city in the United States of America. It's Boston, baby.
Ooh.
And just to recap their season, they're the only team in the league to have 3 20-point scorers in Jaylen Brown, Kemba Walker, and Jason Tatum. Only team in the league to have that, with Hayward with 17, Smart 13. And Mike touched on Tice earlier, how slept on Tice was. He was averaging 9-6 this year. Then you got Cantor averaging 8-7, and they split predominantly the whole season with Robert Williams being injured. And I mean, those two together, that's 17 and like 13. That's what you want out of a center, and those guys basically split a normal center's minutes. So, I mean, overall, they're a very good team. Last year, they had high expectations with Kyrie Irving coming back. Everyone healthy. Everyone thought they were going to be a 1-2 seed, make some noise, maybe a finals run, especially coming off a Game 7 Eastern Conference Finals with LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers. They had high expectations, and they obviously did not live up to them. And then this year, I think they got back on track to what they were supposed to be, that post year of almost making the finals, 1 game away. I think, this team is going to be very dangerous in the future with just how young they are. They got a young coach. Brad Stevens, one of the, you listen to broadcasters talk about him, or just even NBA analysis, he's just one of the smartest coaches in the league, and his out-of-bounds plays, the way he manages games as a coach. They're very young. They don't need any free agents. They can maybe use a center. But overall this season, I think they're going to make some noise, make a finals run. Hopefully we get to see that. If we get an NBA season of some sorts post-COVID-19, hopefully we can come back. But I think Boston, whether or not, the year ends now, they had a very great year, and they're going to make some noise in the future.
Yeah, Damon, if you want to go.
Yeah, so I'll pick up and I'll talk about the unanimous unnamed NBA champions, the Oklahoma City Thunder. Okay, so I'm talking about here. We got the consistency amongst scoring. We had Russell Westbrook last year, who, he pretty much ran the team. And once you kind of went past him, the drop-off was tremendous. And so I think what I really liked about this season was the consistency of scoring. You had 4 guys scoring over 17 points a game. You had Chris Paul and his amazing leadership stepping in, and he's shooting 7% higher than he was last year, and averaging 2 more points a game, averaging 17 points, 6 assists. And then beyond that, then you got the young Shea Gilgeous, like I was talking about earlier, averaging 19 points, 6 rebounds. His highlighting his season was his 20-point, 20-rebound, 10-assist game. And that's unheard of from a guard. So I think that he was a huge guy. And then even the vet adding in Danilo Gallinari, shooting 19 points, getting 19 points per game. These are just things that Oklahoma City just didn't have before. And then you have the solid play of Steven Adams. And I think something that they really focused on this offseason was building the bench. And as like Chewy talked about a little bit earlier, the bench has been somewhere that's always been a weak point for the Thunder. And adding guys like Dennis Schroeder and Nerlens Noel, who's had kind of an injury-riddled career, but once you've seen this season when he was healthy, he's getting 8 points, 9 boards off the bench, and still one of the most efficient centers, shooting percentage wise. And then the big emergence of the young guys, the rookie Darius Bazley, Abdel Nadir, Amito Jallo, all guys putting in between 6 to 8 points a game. And then you got Lou Dort. Lou Dort, man. Two-way guy from the G League. His story is actually really sweet because, with two-way guys, you only have so many days you can play in the NBA, and like the practice days count. So he was not even practicing with the team. He was practicing by himself and was only watching film and was starting at guard and highlighted the season with the season high of like 18, 19 points, still being very efficient. So overall, I think they had a great season, and hopefully they get to finish it out.
Shane.
I think I'm going to have to disagree with Chewy on the, at least the most loyal fan base in all of sports is the Detroit fan base. I think if you have to watch the Lions and the Pistons and the Tigers as of late play every week, you got to be pretty loyal to keep that up.
Don't forget the Dead Wings. Red Wings.
The Wings were good up until these past 2 years. They had that 26 playoff record. So you got to put some respect on the Wings names.
Well, at least of late.
Yeah, at least of late they're bad. Even the Tigers have had good seasons, but they've been bad as of late too. But for Pistons basketball, they've been mediocre for far too long. We're looking at teams that get happy when they get the 8 seed and get the privilege of getting smacked by the 1 seed. I think it's just getting to the point where it's unacceptable. And I think the owners know that. I think with trading Andre Drummond this year for a bag of chips and a second-round pick, I think that's they're trying to rebuild as best as they can. I think getting rid of Reggie Jackson finally, I think that he needed to go just for the development of this team. I think that was a great subtraction. And some additions that I thought were good was with Demboy off the draft this year, just seeing his development as a raw player and just coming into his own. I think that he was a bright spot on this team this year. I also like the way Christian Wood stepped up when Reggie Jackson left to just become a scorer, a rebounder, just a better player. My biggest disappointment is in Blake Griffin. I think if he's gonna play, he has to be 100% in there. If not, sit down, take your season off, whatever you got to do. Don't come in and get yourself hurt, because it's just hurting this team. It's hurting the Detroit fan morale. I know you want to see your big guy play, but if his knee isn't 100%, you got to sit him down. And I think the emergence of Derrick Rose is also one of my bright spots this year. I think Derrick Rose's story is great. I think him coming back from his ACL tears and his earliest rookie of the year to nothing and to now a very solid role player in the NBA, very solid point guard. It's going to get you good minutes, get you points where he needs it. He can't jump anymore to dunk in his ferocious dunks that he used to, but I could see him being a very good piece for the Pistons for at least the next couple of years while they're trying to develop young guys and build. So I think the Pistons are heading in the right direction, but they still have a long way to go before they're going to be any type of elite team or even what the fans deserve at this point.
Just a quick ad before Mike heads into his team is just think about Derrick Rose is I think unanimously probably just one of the most loved players in the league, and it's good to see him finally, the last 2 years be some healthy, dropping 50 in a game for Minnesota, and being a very good piece for the Pistons this year. And Shane, you touched on him being your sixth man. I think we can all agree, if you hate Derrick Rose and you just don't like basketball because you love seeing a guy like that, eventually become healthy enough to play because he was an electric player, youngest MVP we've seen.
I like him coming to Detroit too. I think he's coming to a loving fan base, as much as you can. The team that they're not a fan of, but Detroit loves their players. Got Miguel Cabrera and Justin Brett, people that are faces of programs that people love, and D-Rose is going to become one of those players for Detroit down the stretch.
Yeah, I also want to add, I do think that this year and next year are very make or break years. Like draft wise, they have to make good moves now, or though all this rebuilding was for nothing because they haven't had the best past draft wise. So I think this is the year they have to start turning it around, or they're in trouble.
Yeah, I think personally, I think they need to blow the whole thing up. I think Blake Griffin's got to go. He just takes up a lot of cap space for someone who's not going to play that much. You could probably get something decent in return. I mean, even if it's just a cap dump at this point, I don't think he's worth keeping on the team. I don't think he wants to be here.
I think it would be a big blow to Detroit. Just the fan base and the program. You got to get something for him, or you may as well keep him. And people like come out to see big names in Detroit. You can't just because they people were mad when they dumped Andre for a bag of chips in a second round pick. I think John Henson and Brandon Knight, while they could become something, they just ain't. They ain't what Detroit needs right now. They need someone that is either going to be good or at least just leave your superstar and get some ratings. But I think if you're going to get rid of Blake Griffin, you need to get at least something back that's palatable. Not just a cap dump at this point.
All right, so I am a Boston fan as well, but obviously I'm not going to recap the same team as Chewy. I'm a big James Harden fan, so I picked Houston. Um, so initially when they traded for Russell Westbrook, I was not a big fan of it. Yeah, they're friends. That's all cool, but their play styles are too similar. Um, they both are ball dominant players who want to take over themselves. They don't want to have to rely on other players essentially. And in my opinion, James Harden's a better version of Russell Westbrook, but that doesn't really matter. So I think it was not a good move on Houston's part to trade for Russell Westbrook. I thought, and then so originally I thought it was a bad idea. Then before the season, I was like, oh, it might not be that bad. James Harden can shoot. He's a proven shooter, and he can do stuff off like off ball. He can. He doesn't like to, but he can. Compared to Russell Westbrook, who's a good ball handler as well. So I thought that could work. James Harden playing a little bit more off the ball. But once the season started, it was just whoever had the ball, that's who they were playing. They weren't playing together. They were horrible on the court together. It almost seemed like after like midway through the game, they would never be on the court at the same time. They'd be switching on and off who gets to play essentially. I'm not a big fan of them together personally. And then also trading Clint Capella was huge. Clint Capella, I think he was super underrated. Great rebounder, excellent defender. He did his job on offense. He didn't really care for the ball. Wasn't a good post player on offense. He was more of just a dunker, catching offensive rebounds or lobs. But he did his job. That's all he cared about. But I do like the addition of Robert Covington. It allows them to play extreme small ball with PJ Tucker at the 5, and he's only 6'7" or 6'8". So I don't know if that's going to work because the West, if we had to pick a conference with big men, the West is definitely it. And I'm not sure PJ Tucker is going to be able to hold up against Bron. Bron's not even their big, but Bron, Davis, JaVale McGee, Dwight Howard, and then you got Rudy, Steve Adams. I just don't think the small ball is going to work. They'll put up a competition in the playoffs. I don't think they're going to win a series though. I think they're going to get beat by themselves because at the end of the day, they've shown that they play back and forth. They don't play together.
Yeah, something I really did. I feel like they were they were way more efficient when they kind of were doing the thing where they had Westbrook on the court at one time and then Harden on the court and the other time, that they didn't run them at the same time. But I feel like Russell Westbrook really stepped up this season. Like, even though his assists and rebounds went down a little bit more, but that's because he wasn't the only option. His shooting percentage went up 5%, and his points per game. And those last 10 games before the season ended, he had one game under 24 points. And the games where Harden was just shooting like 2 for 25. Russell was really stepping up and putting up big numbers.
Yeah, but let's not forget the beginning of the season, though. Russell Westbrook was garbage. He not to take away from James Harden, because James Harden the last probably month, I would say, I mean, he was putting up dates for his field goal percentage, 2 for 25, like crap. He was playing like crap, and Russell Westbrook did take over. But at the beginning of the season, Russell Westbrook was playing. He was doing Russell Westbrook things. He was he's a volume shooter, but he was being inefficient with it.
Yeah, just a quick ad before we wrap this up is, I think due to the beginning of the year, they just had to learn how to play together, which is going to be hard with two superstars, especially at the guard positions, both ball dominant. It was going to take some time. I think towards the end of the season, they started to play better together, even though they were running at times, like you said, one on, one off. And, I mean, it seemed to work a little bit. And then I just think eventually, like you said, they would got overmatched in the playoffs. But, this is No B.S. Sports. We're just a couple future Rec League Hall of Famers, and we want to thank you guys for listening. Tune in for our next podcast. You can follow us on Twitter at Bum Squad Sports. Bum and Squad and Sports are capital. And then on Twitter, No BS _sports. Follow us on Instagram. We'll be posting new content. Thank you all for listening. We'll soon open up suggestions so you guys can ask us some questions that we can answer in the show. Thank you guys, and that's it for today.
Peace.
Peace out, guys.
Oh yeah, Step Brothers.